GM?
Yeah. You see the Super Bowl commercial? Yeah, you saw the Super Bowl commercial. They're like, we're making EVs now.
Oh, big deal.
Yeah, they really
They've
swung
talked
around
about
on
that
that
forever.
one.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, but they
don't
say
have
they're
it.
actually going to do it now.
Oh,
I mean, they started before everybody in the 90s
yeah,
on EVs.
Yeah.
And then they crunched
Yeah.
them all.
yeah.
Real quick, before we start, if you ever need requests for a future episode, you could send us an email, totl@abyssheadphones.com.
So, what was the worst advice you were ever given in audio? I don't even know where the hell
That's
to
a tricky
begin with this one.
Usually I'm the one giving the advice.
Yeah, same here. I can't remember back far enough when
would've
someone
had to
was
have been a
giving me
while ago,
advice.
yeah.
Maybe it was at Best Buy when you were young.
Well, I was
Something.
on HeadFi a while ago.
Yeah.
When was this? It was like 2006.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was looking for a recommendation on a better DAC amp thing, USB powered preferably, to plug my headphones into. Because at the time I had like a MacBook thing or whatever, and it wasn't great. Main problem was it just didn't play loud enough. So you need an actual amplifier because it needs to amplify, just ignoring the sonic fidelity aspect. But of course, I understood at the time that that was a possibility. You could get something that would sound and perform better than a stock laptop. And I guess the worst advice I've gotten, which isn't really that much of a thing, but somebody told me to buy a thing that ended up being junk. And it was universal on the forum. Everyone's like, oh, they get this thing. It's so great. Wow, amazing value. Only $150 or whatever. I forgot what it was called. But it's not good. Wasn't impressive at all. Wasn't any better than the MacBook.
Yeah, I think my worst is probably similar to, I think it would go way back, like when we used to have desktop speakers for the PCs,
Yeah.
you know?
Ah, yes.
And used to like try to find somebody talking about that in the early days of forums, right? And it's like you're still running almost a green screen, barely have color screens. CompuServe actually had an audio forum back in the day in the 90s. It's on CompuServe, whatever that is now, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but there was an actual audio forum there, and those are still guys around today that are on some of the forums that were on it back in the day, along with me. But anyway, yeah. So I think I can't remember the model, but I know some people talked about what the best desktop things were, and all these things were relatively inexpensive. I mean, not cheap, but you're going to spend something. And in the end, yeah, it never worked out to be the good advice. You really had to go to like a Circuit City or whatever the stores had
Try
this stuff.
things out.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
really had to go and play it there to hear what you were dealing with, because some of them had subs, some didn't need subs, But yeah, ultimately you really had to hear it. And it was just useless advice to try to get people,
Yeah.
because people really didn't know what they were listening to on these things,
Yeah, I guess it would be similar for me as well. Like, but kind of different. People you go into a forum and you see one specific thing that everybody just says, "This is it. Get this. There's nothing else. You don't need to look anymore. Just get this." And it's usually not that great.
Yeah.
Because nobody's looking. That's what happens. Everybody comes to a consensus. Nobody looks back into it. It's
Yeah.
like, this is the standard, and it's a standard, and that's it. So that
You
is a
kind of
problem.
get that herd mentality.
Yeah.
Because everybody groups together and says, yeah, we all got the best.
Yeah.
And so it makes it difficult for an outlier that doesn't feel that is the best to come in and say something different, because everybody just bashes them.
Yeah.
So that is trouble there. And that seems to still happen today.
Well, I
Maybe
guess-
not quite as bad as it did. I think partly because there's so much more out there. There's so much more diversity and so many more
There's
products.
a lot of sub forums,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everyone's got their own.
Yeah.
Everyone's in their own topic area, so
Yeah.
they kind of group
It's
together.
hard for somebody to say, wow,
know?
this is just the greatest,
So-
when you have 100 products.
Yeah.
But back in the earlier days, there was only a handful, so people kind of picked the ones they liked.
Yeah.
It still happens.
I guess it's just like automotive forum, same thing. Like, everybody's talking about Fords. Fords are the best in one, and then so nobody's looking
yeah,
into anything
then you go to
else in
another
there,
forum and
you know?
they say a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing is don't get caught up in a bubble.
Yeah. Well, that, and
It's hard to sometimes avoid.
if you can take a car for a test drive, do it. 'Cause
Well, same thing. Yeah.
especially if you're worried about how it drives.
Well,
You know,
yeah.
if you're just worried about colors and interiors, no worries.
Yeah, you can do that online.
Yeah, you could do that, sure, all day long. But yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice to have a test drive on anything. It's just spending money on.
You always need to question the experience of the person giving you the advice. And a lot of times on a forum, it's kind of difficult to do. Most people don't have huge amounts of advice, and the ones that do oftentimes seem to post less. There's only a really small handful of people that have a lot of experience and talk about their experience frequently.
There's a lot of people on forums that don't say anything either. They're
Yeah.
in the background and they probably know the answer to these questions, but they prefer not to get involved. And I don't blame them. You know, they're afraid that somebody else is going to bash them because they don't follow suit.
Or every time they say something, that does happen.
Yeah, right.
That's a common thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually pretty good nowadays, but yeah, there's some places where you're not welcome to voice your opinion. You know,
Yeah.
but then again, it makes sense. Like we talked about before, you don't go into a Porsche forum and say how great GM cars are.
Yeah, some people do that,
You
though.
know, you should have
Yeah,
bought
you're
you
looking
should have
for a
bought a
fight.
Viper.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
right. You're asking for it. What do you think they're going to say?
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with headphone in the audio community too. It's the same.
I've
deal.
seen these things quite a few times in hindsight, how somebody typically with a low post count will come in and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? And then everybody would just bash it. Oh, that's ridiculous.
yeah.
Absurd. It can't be better. And then time goes on and more of these dismissals happen. And when inevitably people find out that that thing that these people were talking about was better, nobody goes back and figures out that what these people were saying was actually true. They never really revalidate or change their perspective. It's
Right.
like a really slow shift for people to come to a new consensus.
Well, we're fortunate. We're surrounded by a lot of good shit.
Yeah, well.
So we kind of create the voice more than take
Yeah,
it.
it's a
'Cause
different atmosphere.
I guess one way to look at this is the word "free" comes in front of advice, and you know how you go the running joke, right? You get what you pay for. So
Yeah,
you got to take it with a grain of salt, And but I don't know who you'd pay for advice. Like if you
Pay for advice? Yeah.
like, can you pay someone to give you real
some
advice?
Oh,
advice
I'm sure you
services.
could pay someone for some good
Yeah,
advice.
but how do you know it's going to be good?
Well, that's the thing.
You kind of don't.
Yeah, you
Same
don't.
thing with anything else. Like
Yeah.
just because you pay for a home inspector doesn't mean they're going to do a good job.
Well, that's true. Yeah, they could miss a whole bunch of shit.
Right.
Yeah. So it is what it is. It's caveat emptor.
It's very difficult.
Buyer beware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it always comes down to the same thing. Just you got to research things from as many angles as you can before you make a decision.
And usually the guys that have the baller systems, they kind of know. They've probably been through all the other stuff already.
Yeah.
There's some people that rock through gear.
Yeah.
Those guys tend to know. I mean, there's exceptions. There's some guys that are so opinionated that they only like one thing, right? If you only like the color red and everything else is a different color,
Well, it is.
your opinion's not really the greatest because if it ain't red, it doesn't work for you.
Has
right?
limited value.
Oh,
Yeah, so you got to play.
right.
You got to play. You got to play that kind of sort of game with a. You got to take that with a grain of salt. You got to understand that it's not the end all opinion.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to if you can't go out and try all this stuff, find someone who has and follow them.
Yeah,
Preferably a few people.
Yeah.
and,
a few
and they
people.
should sound reasonable.
Yeah.
If they seem very opinionated, then
Yeah, if everything's junk
you got to
except the
average
one
it
thing,
out. Yeah,
that's a little suspicious.
Yeah, you got to average it out. So anyway, this goes for all price points too. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at guys with baller rigs or
Yeah.
or like our last episode, an MP3 player, right? It's kind of the same thing.
Oh, it's the same thing. Even more important in the low end.
Yeah.
I think you find more of this type of herd mentality in the low end than you do in the high end. Not to say it doesn't happen; it happens everywhere. But it's easier to find it.
There's
in
a
the
lot
value
more.
segment.
There's a lot more to argue about in the low end. I think
There's
there's
a
a
lot
lot of crap. There's a lot of stuff down
There's more
there.
confusion.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, which brings us back to dough. So, a deer, a
Yeah.
female deer.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, in the end, do your best to listen to it first or try it out,
If possible.
and if possible. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to have to just average out the BS and figure out what's right and wrong,
Yeah.
like all of us do.
Yeah, I guess there's no clear-cut path to advice,
No.
unfortunately.
Yeah. But hope it's a good one. Hope
Yeah.
it's good advice. Save you money. Speaking of good advice, maybe we'll talk about that in the next episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
A little foreshadowing.
Yeah. On that note, take care, everyone. Thank you.